What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Crash Bang Boom podcast. Today's guest is drummer Derek S. Abrams of the one and only Ministry, who I caught up with when Ministry came through New York to play a sold-out show with Phil Anselmo and the Illegals, Primus, and all in the name of the farewell tour of the one and only Slayer. But Derek and I caught up in a hotel lobby, so not the most conducive, quiet atmosphere necessarily, but then again, I suppose it's also appropriately Midtown Manhattan. In any case, Derek and I talk about the wisdom of junior high and high school band instructors, us both being in awe at him playing a sold-out show at Madison Square Garden, and we both recount our first time seeing Ministry on the 92 Lollapalooza, plus a whole lot more. Even got in some drum geekery and some tech talk. Shout out to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. If your band, your project, your comedy record, etc. is looking to put out some vinyl, go on over to NewOrleansRecordPress.com to check out the many vinyl coloring, packaging, mastering, and more options. And you can add it all up in the real-time quote generator. Need assistance with design? They can help you, and they print both 12 and 7-inch records in both 120 and 180 gram variants. So hit them up, and that's NewOrleansRecordPress.com. Crash Bang Boom podcast can be found on my SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes podcast, as well as Stitcher, Google Play, Luminary, and just about everywhere else. So feel free to give me a like, a subscription, a follow, and or a positive rating. Por favor. I'm also obviously on Instagram, Facebook, and the like. I apparently post to Twitter, just not very much. So here we go. Derek S. Abrams, Ministry. Jesus built my hot ride. Crash, bang, boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
All right, Derek S. Abrams of Ministry, what's going on, dude? How the hell might you be?
I'm good. I'm really good. Been on tour for the last 5 or 6 days here with Slayer and Primus and Phil Anselmo and the Illegals. It's been amazing.
Walking by Madison Square Garden, I was like, man, this guy's playing here tonight.
Yeah, right. I still can't believe it. I was telling my wife earlier today I have to keep checking myself to make sure it's really happening, you know?
Yeah, 3 years ago, prior to being in Ministry, I suppose you wouldn't have necessarily foreseen yourself playing Madison Square Garden.
Not at all, but I'm mad about it. I'm ready to do this, you know?
I hear you. And y'all are a few shows into it. This, as you said, out of 22 shows or so y'all are doing?
I believe it's 22 shows that we have on the tour. We have 4 shows that are kind of off the tour that we're headlining at some smaller venues, but they're going to be awesome because we've got like the Machine Shop in Flint, Michigan, and then we've got another spot in Idaho.
Okay.
I forget the exact. It's like 10 miles outside of Boise, which would be amazing. For some strange reason, every time we've been to Boise, Idaho, it's been crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a state that's on my bucket list to go to because of the national parks, but I've been to so many states in the United States. I've not been to Idaho. It's
actually really, really cool. I mean, when it comes to architecture and whatnot, it's not like one of those meccas like here in New York City, but the people are amazing. Rock shows go off the chain, so it's worth it. It's worth it, yeah.
That's awesome, man. Have you been able to check out the bands thus far? I know you're kind of early into the tour.
Yeah, it's really interesting on this tour because we're done at 7:40 p.m. Normally we're doing a headlining show for 75 to 90 minutes, and then it's getting on midnight and we're all exhausted. And the bands beforehand, we don't get to see them because we're either doing interviews or doing warm-ups or whatnot. So there's always something going on that keeps us from seeing bands more than once.
Right.
And this tour so far, we've been able to really kind of see every band.
That's great.
Which is really cool. Plus, they're all bands that we're all fans of, and for myself included. Like, I'm a huge Primus fan. I'm a huge Slayer fan.
Yeah.
I'm a giant Pantera fan, and the tribute that Phil's doing is so cool. Like, hearing those old songs is just so much fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just awesome.
It's a great lineup. I mean, between the 4 of y'all, that's one hell of a lineup. It's rare that a big show has like a stacked bill that's killer.
Yeah, and it's really like more of an eclectic mix than you normally get at a Slayer show.
I love it that they threw Primus on there, for instance.
Yeah.
Like that totally just mixes everything up. And what a killer band Primus is. Have you been able to sit close side stage and watch Primus?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't get to do very often, but I've had a chance to do it like the last 5 nights that we've been on this tour, and it's a different show every night.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like, I mean, Primus being one of those bands that's got such a extensive catalog of music.
Absolutely.
And it's the 3 original members of the band. They can pick and choose what they feel like doing that night.
That's amazing.
And so far it's been like there's 4 or 5 songs that they'll do in a certain spot, but in between those songs, they'll switch it out every night.
Amazing.
And which keeps people guessing, and that's kind of one of the things that Primus does is they'll choose a song so that way it's a different show every night, and it keeps people following them.
Exactly.
Which I would love to be able to do more of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, are y'all locked into a particular set due to like visuals that are happening and lights and everything? So everything's kind of choreographed in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's
sequenced.
It's sequenced. It's choreographed. We've got lights. We've got video. We've got smoke machines, and I mean, you name it. This time we don't have any pyro, just because we really never do pyro because one of us will get crazy with it, and it'll end up setting a fire where it's not supposed to set a fire. So
right, I hear
that's just what how we are.
Have you been able to hang with any of the Primus guys?
Yeah, I have. I got to drink some of Les Claypool's wine.
Nice.
It's Pachyderm Cellars.
Okay.
If you're into red wine, he makes. Les doesn't personally make it, but he's got a guy that he's works with to make his wine. He buys his grapes, and he's really into red wine, which I love red wine too.
Me too.
Just because it's one of those old drinks that's been around for centuries.
I know.
And they've had time to really refine it. So
absolutely.
I love red wine, and we were drinking red wine on the bus with Al and Les's wife and myself and Paul. It was just like, I kind of looked around and I was like, if this was 10 years ago, we'd be throwing beers at each other. But right now we're sitting down like refined,
gentlemen having
a glass of wine and with a piece of dark chocolate and talking about music, which, again, I'm not mad about being able to do stuff like that. So
absolutely,
yeah, it's been really cool.
Well, how did you end up getting the call to join ministry in the first place?
It's an interesting story. To kind of condense it a little bit, I used to work at Paisley Park with a really good friend of mine that I'd known for a long time, Rick Peliquin. He was the property manager there, and I worked there with him, and then he left Paisley Park after 2 decades, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And he left. Then he started working with different bands, got the job with Ministry, and I'd kind of lost track of him for about 5 years, and until one night I ran into him I was playing a gig in this dumpy little cover band.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Can you get away for a month? Because I need a drum tech." And I said, "Yeah. What band is it?" And he's like, "Ministry." And I'm like, "Oh, shit, I love that band. I'm in." So I did a month on the road with them as a drum tech, and had always just stayed in contact with the band after I got to meet them. And then anytime they were doing stuff in the U.S. and they needed somebody, they would call me and I would do it.
Yeah.
And got to be friends, just kind of got closer with Caesar and Sin, and then always kept in contact with Al and Liz, and just kind of developed a relationship until one time it just kind of came up. We happen to be looking for a drummer, and we know we get along with you 23 hours out of the day. Come out, audition, and we'll see if we can get along with you for 24 hours of the day.
Yeah.
Meaning the hour that we're on stage. If you can do that, I think we might have a fit. So I went, I auditioned. It went to be brutally honest, the first time I got together with them was kind of a nightmare, because a lot of the stuff that we do is live sampled, not to tracks or anything like that. So I got some stuff sent to me from JB, who's out in Pennsylvania, and he sent it to me via email, and some of the stuff wasn't quite right.
Oh.
So I'm playing with Sin and our bass player Tony at the time, and I'm like, they're like, "This doesn't sound right." And I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't sound right to me either." So we just kind of scrapped it for the day, got together again a week later, and kind of got things sorted out. And then that one went amazing. So
awesome. At
that point, we all felt good about it.
Right.
So, and there was, a good 48 hours of me being really nervous, I'm never going to hear from these guys again, because this went, So flash back even farther, I put together a kind of a demo video, and I sent that out to the band, to everybody in the band, saying, if you need a drummer, or because this is when I had heard about them in need of a drummer, and before I'd gotten the call, I sent them that, and then I didn't get a phone call for 48 hours from there, and that was an even longer 48 hours, because I thought for certain I had just completely burnt a bridge.
Oh God!
But turns out it was untrue. So here I am now, and I'm absolutely happy to be where I'm grateful to where I am right now, and I owe them my career right now, especially Rick and Al and Sin, and they're amazing people, and I'm so stoked to work with them.
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah. I mean, you're in the band at this point, and then you have to learn what is. I mean, the Ministry's going on 40 years. I mean, if it started at 81, we're 2 years out from it being 40 years, which is fucking incredible.
83, I think, is the official
first record.
Yep, official first record. But yeah, there's a big catalog of music that I still don't even know, and there's a large catalog of stuff that doesn't even get played.
Yeah.
Generally, how it works, like on a tour, we'll get a set list, and if there's anything new on it, then it's up to us to have it learned, have it ready.
Yeah, you got to shed outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring your A game at all times.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the way it should go.
Of course, I agree.
At all times, always bring your A game. If you're not bringing your A game, someone's getting shorted.
Right.
And that's not fair to the audience. That's not fair to the band. It's not fair to yourself. It's
of course. It's also something to be said for doing homework outside of it and coming in prepared.
Yeah.
And everybody being dedicated to doing that. Of course, that makes it easier when your livelihood is tied to this.
Absolutely.
But even when it's not, it's one of those things that always kind of drives me crazy about musicians who will just not do their homework and want to come in and waste everyone's time so you can teach them something that they should have learned on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I mean, that goes in with just practice.
Right.
If you don't spend the time to practice and hone your craft, like one of my favorite drummers on the planet, Jean-Paul Gasteur from Clutch.
Yeah, he's great.
He came to and did a clinic at a school I was teaching at for a little while, and he said, drums is an instrument that you're not going to lick. Right. You're never going to get to the point where you have mastered all of it. There's no more to learn.
Right.
Because it's always changing. There's always new things coming out, and if you feel like you have mastered it and you don't need to work at it anymore, your career is done.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. That resonated so well with me, because as drummers, we're 99% of us are gear nerds. 99% of us are always looking for something new, and we're always trying to find something that's gonna push us in a direction to push an envelope or try something new. Or if we could grow a third limb, we'd do it.
Right.
Just so we could get that polyrhythm perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, man. In visiting some of the material, and of which there's a lot of it, was there any stuff that was particularly challenging? I know when I think about it, and we can talk about it. I know I saw Ministry on, I think, the '93 Lollapalooza, so they were touring off the Psalm 69 record.
Yeah,
they were that was one of the most, to this day, one of the most high energy shows I've seen in my life.
Yeah,
so
me too.
Did you have to acclimate to the sustained energy of a full set of learning that material, or
not really? I started with rock, of course, as all young kids do. I started playing when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
But I started with rock music, and then by the time I got to be about 13 or 14, I got exposed to, of course, Buddy Rich. Then I just dove headfirst into jazz and studied jazz extensively. Then after that, I started studying hand percussion and really kind of stepped away from traditional, most teenagers just want to listen to, metal, play metal, or rock or whatever music that they're into. They just want to focus on that with their drums. But me, I wanted to learn all of it. So I got into jazz, New Orleans jazz, and learning all kinds of different types of music. And then I learned, that drums is really not that old of an instrument. The actual contemporary trap kit is about 100 years old.
Yeah.
Considering the viola is. What are we at now? Almost 800 years it's been around.
Maybe
I can't
insane,
even.
Right.
It's been around forever.
Right. Symphonies and have been playing shit for a very long time. Obviously,
at least 300 to 500 years that they've been.
That alone.
So for drums to be such a young instrument, it's cool because it kind of brings you to another point where another friend of mine said, this is the best time to be playing drums, because as of right now the technology's finally it's catching up to what's in our heads. Because, at this point, electronic drums and triggering and sampling is to the point where now it's not like if you think about 10 years ago where, say, Roland had I think 10 years ago was the TD. That was probably the TD-20 then, but I'm thinking, let's go 20 years back to the TD-10.
Right.
And, you could try to get it into a studio, but you had the lag and it just didn't feel right.
Right.
Now they're millimeters away from replicating an actual feel of a real drum.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it's exciting.
Just think about I have one of those SPDSX samplers, just to be able to throw all those on a desktop. Yeah, I'm going to throw that one there, arrange everything, and then you go back to how Ministry was doing samples back in the day. Completely different worlds.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah. we still do a lot of that old world stuff.
So what are some of those aspects of sampling that's still present?
We have an extensive keyboard rig. We call JB, the man behind the curtain, where he's the man behind the keys.
Yeah.
And he does live samples with a lot of the stuff. So we're really just running a click, and a lot of the stuff that you're hearing on stage is all of us actually playing together. Because, kind of industry standard now is that you've got backing tracks that you work with. You hit play on an MP3 player, and it just goes, and you got to stay with it.
Yeah.
There are some songs that we do that to just because it's just not possible. I mean, if JB had 5 arms, we could get that to work, but he only has 2. So he's still playing a lot of stuff, and there's also tracks in the background that are taking care of other things that he just doesn't have enough limbs to fill.
Right.
So, and especially with tunes like Jesus Built My Hot Rod.
Oh yeah.
Where there's so much going on in that song.
Oh yeah.
So much going on where we have to have those things going on.
Right.
Otherwise, the song just wouldn't sound right.
Yeah,
for sure. Which is one of the main reasons why I had learned not that long ago, because we just put that into the set as of last April.
Wow.
So we had just learned that it was to the point where now the technology is there to where we can put it all together and make it sound right.
Yeah.
Because it didn't sound right for the longest time whenever they would play it before I was in the group, and they're like, it just doesn't sound right, so we're not going to do it.
Wow. No shit.
Yeah.
Let's go back to, I guess, the first time you saw Ministry, because the first time that I kind of became aware of them, I don't know if it was, honestly, I think it was when Psalm 69 came out. So, I think that's 92. And then I saw him at Lollapalooza. And like I said, it was one of the most high energy, incredible fucking shows I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I believe they had 2 drum set players, if I recall right, at the time. And it was just the energy, the creepiness, the light show, everything about it was so over the top that it was just mind-blowing.
And they had that almost like a papier-mâché costume of a guy dressed up kind of like George Bush Sr.
Yeah.
I was at that show as well at Harriet Island in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay.
And that was the first time I'd seen Ministry, and a really good friend of mine turned me on to them. He's like, because we were going to Lollapalooza, and I knew a lot of the bands that were there. Because, there were so many bands that were touring, their biggest records. And it stood out from everybody else on the bill that day.
Right.
And it was just such an amazing thing to see. So, and that was, I think I was 14 or 15 then.
Yeah, you and I are close in age then.
Yeah, and if somebody would have told me at that time, you're going to be playing in that band
that's insane.
in 20 years, I would have, I said, fuck off. You don't know. No way. But yeah.
One of the funny things as well in reminiscent about seeing that show in that pre-internet, I had never heard the song Thieves. I was only familiar with Psalm 69 going into that. So I knew, TV2 and Jesus Built My Hot Rod. And I don't remember if they played Scarecrow or not on that, but New World Order they certainly did.
Yeah.
So there was at least 3 or 4 off that. So I knew those. And then Thieves come on and I was like, what fucking song is this? But my friends, no one knew who it was. So I was like, well, I guess I need to get some of the other records and hope that it's on that record.
Right.
And when I just thinking about that, I'm like, how indicative of a completely different time that you're like, I have to get an entire record and hope that the song is on it that I heard at the live show.
Yeah.
Not go to a streaming service and say, oh, that's it. I just want that one song.
Yeah.
Completely different fucking way.
Well, and then at the same time, too, the only way you're going to find new music is to go and get the metal magazines that were on the newsstands, like Hit Parader and Metal Edge and Circus.
Right.
All those and I think Revolver was even around still at that time, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how you found music. That's how you found T-shirts and got the killer rings and all that type of swag shit that they had. I think it was Blue Grape.
Oh, yeah?
Was the company that had all the concert shirts after they were done.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I remember thumbing through those magazines and seeing pictures of all these guys and seeing pictures of Al with his mic stand with the goat skulls on it. And thinking to myself, that's what I'm going to do when I grow up.
Oh, my God.
I want to be in those magazines, but those magazines aren't around anymore, so...
Exactly.
I guess I'll have to settle for the internet.
Yeah, there it is. When you got the Ministry call, did you say, hey, to your parents, show them a picture of Al Jourgensen and say, hey, this is the guy that I'm playing in a band with. Aren't y'all super excited?
Well, actually, my parents have really been very supportive of me, and my brother's also a bass player. And so they've been really supportive. It was a musical family growing up.
Yeah.
Mom played a little piano, and Dad played guitar. Dad also played guitar in a band when back in the 60s, and my uncle was the bass player in that band. So we were all really supported.
Nice.
As soon as one of us had made mutterings of wanting to play an instrument. Like I was at the age of 7, I was in the kitchen setting up pots and pans.
Yep.
And then I think it was June 6th of 1984.
Okay.
Because I got my hand slammed in a car door.
Oh, no.
And I got the cast off that day, and then I came home that day, and there was a drum set for me.
Holy moly.
Yeah, so I never
Do you remember what drum set it was?
Yes, it was a Pilot Junk, and I loved it. I mean, I would skip school so that I could play it.
That's amazing.
It was a Stetson.
Oh, I don't even know the Stetson.
Stetson is a made in Japan, 1960s, 1970s.
Okay.
It had, if memory recalls correctly, it had kind of like Gretsch knockoff lugs on it.
Right.
And I loved it.
That's
had,
amazing.
Concert toms, and like the front bass drum had no front head on it.
Yeah.
And, it was just, it had been beat to crap by the kid that had it before me, but I loved it. Like I wouldn't leave it alone.
Yeah.
And it was really cool that my parents, they never bothered them that I was in the basement constantly playing drums.
Yeah. Well,
And,
it's amazing that you had a basement instead
right.
of the living room.
Yeah,
just
right.
set up, just
right,
bashing.
Yeah, because growing up in Minnesota, there's a basement everywhere.
Yeah.
As soon as I moved out to LA, I was asking some friends that had houses out there. I'm like, "Where's your basement at? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
There are no basements out here." I'm thinking to myself, like, "Well, yeah, that's right. If there's an earthquake, it's all gonna go right down."
Oh, I grew up in Louisiana, so yeah, no basements there either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, there was that, and then all throughout high school too. I had bands that my brother and I played in, and our parents just really didn't care if we would get to having a jam session in the basement. They'd either go out to dinner or go to a movie or whatever it was, or they would sit upstairs and didn't care.
Right.
So it was amazing. They would, in fact, they would even fight with the police when they would come and complain about us being too loud, with the neighbors getting pissed off about us playing. So
Yeah.
they would even argue with them. So it was great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When you think back to you and your brother jamming, what was some of the early songs y'all were learning and
Primus.
Oh, that's amazing. It's funny. Now I know that you and I are close in age as well, because we didn't play. I don't know that we played any Primus covers. We probably tried, but I know we played some Helmet covers.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
We attempted a Voivod song, which is a kind of a far left field one.
Yeah.
And I there's video of it out there somewhere on a VHS tape at my dad's house of us attempting to play a Voivod song.
Nice.
It's one of those things where I just kind of almost don't want to see it.
Yeah.
But Primus was such a huge influence.
Yeah, me too. I would say some of the bigger influences that coming up would be like, of course, Vinnie Paul.
Yeah.
And Tim Alexander,
Absolutely.
of course, and Igor Cavalera from Sepultura.
Dude, when Arise came, that's another 1991 record.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But the big one for me was Chaos AD.
Okay.
And just as soon as the first time I heard Territory,
Yeah.
I was like, I had to learn the whole record,
Yeah.
front to start. And then, and I would have to say Sepultura was another band that really kind of turned me on to, like, pushing me into learning how to play more hand percussion stuff and how
Interesting.
how that stuff works, especially like the one instrument that really had me hooked was the berimbau.
Okay.
That was the instrument that looks kind of like a bow and arrow.
Uh-huh.
You play it with a stick. I was like, that thing is so cool. I'm going to learn how to play that. I'm going to learn how to play the djembe, and then just got soaked into it, and it was great.
Yeah.
And it only helped.
Right, exactly. It's one of those things where I've said that I'll learn hand percussion and I'll mess around with it if it's there, but the second I kind of figured out that the stick could take the brunt of the abuse, I was like, all right, I think I'm going the stick route. I'm sticking with beating shit with sticks.
Right.
Like a monkey.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. Like, if I have my choice, like, I would rather play the drum set for one. Definitely hitting stuff with sticks is a lot easier on your hands. But then, especially when it comes to recording stuff and being able to add like studio sessions where I'll ask them, like, so do you want me to like lay down some congas or do tambourines and shakers and things like that, so you have that in the record as well. And every time it's been and then it's, especially as like a professional going into a studio for a hired gun session, I'll always let them know I'm going to lay down the drums here, but if you want all that other stuff too, then the price goes up.
Right, exactly.
and that's always been a cool thing where it's everyone's always been into it.
Right.
And it's always made me a little bit extra money in sessions just because I know how to do that stuff.
That's cool.
I'm glad I learned all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, really, the one thing that I didn't learn how to do all that well was to learn to play like the xylophone and the marimba and the vibes.
Melodic percussion stuff.
Yeah. I didn't learn it because I had a junior high band teacher tell me that I wouldn't go anywhere in the music industry if I didn't learn how to play the xylophone.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of been one of those things where I haven't learned it in spite.
Uh-huh.
But I've used it, and I've used it before in other ways, but at the same time, I'd rather use a piano.
Yeah.
I'd much rather use a piano. So that guy can still go to hell, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I was in a music program as well in junior high and high school, and it was kind of a similar thing where they were. I think that's just sort of the general logic in teaching that is like you need to learn some form of melodic percussion. If you don't want to do piano, then maybe like marimba or some other melodic percussion. But teachers don't always know. I mean, they're certainly working with a mixed bag of kids, and they have sort of traditional knowledge that they'll apply. But then again, if you consider the trajectory of your life, you've done your own thing. And I guess one of my questions would be, did you end up studying like drum set with anyone, or are you pretty much self-taught?
50-50.
Okay.
I like as soon as I could get into the high school and like elementary school bands, I was all over it.
Yeah.
For the first, from the age of 7 up until about the age of 10, I was on my own.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got into the school band, then I was taught how to, play with a traditional grip, and then I was also taught how to read music and count music, and of course, like. I was lucky enough in elementary school that we all had music class.
Right.
Where they don't even have that stuff anymore.
Right.
And I was taught how to count music, how to, what these instruments are and blah, blah, blah. And I was already like really into it at that time. And then by the time I got into school band, I was all over it. And then in high school, I was in the marching band, the jazz band, the percussion ensemble, North Winds ensemble, the concert band, the concert varsity band. Like, I spent the whole day in the band room.
You're a band geek, bro.
Oh, God, yes. And I'm proud of it. So, like, I spent the whole day in the band room, and my ninth grade band teacher, Mr. Ranton was his name.
Uh-huh.
He was a drummer himself, and he could tell that I really gave a shit.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen Whiplash, he was kind of like that.
Oh, yeah?
Where if I showed up to a lesson unprepared, he'd throw me out.
Wow.
Right away. He's like, get out. You can't come to the band room for the rest of the day.
Wow.
Which was just like murder, because I would have to go sit in a study hall, or I'd have to go to the office and get yelled at by the principal for not having done my quote-unquote homework.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I never showed up to a lesson unprepared. And he also, early on, gave me a metronome with one of those gross old white earphones, if you remember those, from like a telephone operator would have with the coily cord.
Oh, yeah.
And he gave me a metronome with one of those earbuds, and he said, you need to figure out tempos to walk to and from class and not be late. Follow the tempo to your locker and back.
Whoa.
And if I catch you in the hallway without that earbud in your ear, you can't come to band class.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and he would sit, and when he would conduct with the big band and whatnot, I was always right on him.
Yeah. And
that might be one of the major things that I owe that guy, because I can follow a click with ease.
Yeah.
Where it's one of those things where a lot of people kind of struggle with that. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was just, for lack of a term, it was beaten into me with fear and intimidation, and it's amazing.
That's right. It's wild. You had like the militant band teacher.
I did, and it was great. Like, he actually used to play in a polka group and put himself through college playing drums in a polka group called Whoopie John Wilfart.
Oh.
I'm not kidding. The catchphrase was Whoopie John Wilfart and his band will play.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was a professional drummer throughout high school, and then out of college, he put himself through college, and then as soon as he got out of college, he went into teaching, and still played in symphonies and other jazz bands. So like, he was always playing like I was.
Right.
So he was great. Like, I owe a lot to that guy.
Yeah. My high school band instructor, I was in marching band, and his name was Roy Mouton, and he just told me he told me one really like important thing. One of which he played the oboe, which is an interesting instrument in and of itself, right? And he said that once he got through the academia of it all of college, he felt like he couldn't express himself anymore, and he kind of lost some of that. And he told me really early on, when I was just playing drum set for maybe a couple years at that point, he said, "You're talented, and you seem to have a little bit of a style in your playing, so don't lose that, and don't let instructors ever take that away from you."
Awesome.
And I was like, holy shit, man. To this day, I still think about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, the other funny thing that he told me, not necessarily music related, he would say random shit. He was this old black dude. He was like, my wife told me that it was either the drinking had to go or we weren't going to do the fucking. So I had to take the fucking. That's the other thing he told me. So that's how he quit drinking. She held out sex on him, and he stopped drinking.
It tends to work a lot, you know. You take that shit away, most guys will toe that line,
Absolutely, man. I don't know if you, prior to getting in ministry, had you read Al's autobiography?
The autobiography had just come out when I joined the band.
Wow.
So, yeah, I read through it, and it's...
Did that affect your perception, I would imagine?
No, because I'd already known what I was getting into, having met him in 2015, just before the book came out.
Okay.
And, he's fucking wild dude,
Yeah.
Just got, who was it? I was just... I saw it on Instagram. Dave Navarro said it. He's like, these are words that no one would ever thought they would say. Happy 61st birthday to Al Jourgensen.
Yeah, how is he still alive? It's
right?
Unbelievable. Yeah. Just reading that book, I felt like I got ulcers from reading it.
Right.
I was like, am I fucked up from reading this? Like, that is an intense book.
It is. It's an intense read. And now, I mean, I think probably right now, Al's probably in the dressing room on an exercise bike. Amazing. Yeah, so he's doing really well. He keeps talking about how he's got tons of music that needs to get recorded and get put out there. So I think there's a lot more in store. There's a lot more in store.
Do y'all have plans? Is there any date necessarily set to record something?
No,
Okay.
Nothing as of right now. We're finishing this tour up right now, and then we've got some other stuff in the works for like spring and summer, as far as I know.
Right.
But that's all hearsay right now.
Yeah.
Usually what happens is we'll do a show in New York City here, and our manager comes, and he sits down with the band and opens up his schedule and says, all right, guys, this is what's happening for the next year. So clear your schedules.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of waiting for the after the show tonight to get the update on what we're doing. I'm excited for that.
Nice, man. Well, I know obviously in getting the ministry gig and all of the tech aspects of pulling off this show live, one, you have a drum tech now,
yes,
right? Which is crazy. What set are you presently playing, and how has that evolved now that you have someone to set your shit up and it sounds awesome? You know what I'm saying?
I would say the first gig I did that I actually had a tech, which was my first show with ministry.
Yeah.
And, a professional drum tech. It was so weird.
It has to be.
Because I stood up and was going to start taking my drums apart, and he tugged on my shirt and said, "Get out of here!"
Right.
This is what I do, and I was like, "Oh, that's right. Holy shit! I don't have to do this anymore. Am I going to OD tonight? I mean, holy shit!"
Right. Party.
Exactly. The stuff that I'd always thought about. I wonder what it's like to not have to do this anymore. And then finally having that happen was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And then, but now having, I have Mike Perkin teching for me, and Mike is. I mean, he knows everybody and has worked with everybody, and to have someone that seasoned to work with is absolutely fantastic because on stage I can look at him and I'm not one that can talk and play drums at the same time, which I'm sad about because I would love to be able to sing and play drums. Well, I'd love to be able to sing because I fucking can't.
Really interesting.
Oh, I have a terrible singing voice.
Huh.
Terrible singing voice. And that's, that's all right. I play drums.
Right.
But I can't talk and play drums that well, so I will have to look over at Mike sometimes and just kind of mouth shit.
Uh-huh.
And he gets it.
Yeah.
I'll point at something and I'll be like, and he'll be like, oh yeah, I got it. And I'll point at stuff and he'll have it figured out right away just because he's been doing it for so long and gets the gig and is really attentive. He's one of those guys that's anticipating everything, watching the drums and just always in the know.
Right.
It's really awesome. So
that's crazy.
It's cool to be able to trust somebody and have a safety net like that, especially for a show like this and the way that our set works. That once it's going, it's going.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's only been a few times where I've had the snare side had to blow out.
Yeah. Exactly.
At a show, and that's it happens. And then I'll put my hand up and our keyboard. I'll see it. I'm like, technical, and then he'll kind of hold off for a minute, and Mike is such a good tech that he already knows it's happened, has the other drum, and has the basket loosened up, and as I'm just kind of leaning back, this little switcheroo happens, and I think Liz had said one time we had we needed to make a switch, and she counted to 7, and it was done.
Holy moly!
Yeah, so
it's like NASCAR pit shit, right?
He was on it, and it was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I love having that because, I can think of times in the past and bands coming up where, I'd have a technical difficulty and the show had to stop.
Right. Yeah. I hear you. What kit are you playing and what are the dimensions?
Right now I'm using the Yamaha Live Oak Customs.
Sick.
And they're the loudest
loudest
drums and the heaviest, physically heaviest drums I've ever owned.
Dense, for sure.
but they're amazing drums. It's a Live Oak custom. I have 18 by 24 inch kick drums. I have 2 of those.
Yeah.
I have a 13 by 9 tom tom.
Yeah.
16 by 16 floor tom, and a 16 by 18 floor tom with the Yamaha Recording Custom brass.
I thought it was brass. Yeah. I just bought 2 brass snares last week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with brass.
I'm realizing that I'm a big fan.
Yeah. When it comes to a metal alloy drum, brass is where it's at. You get
agree.
the sensitivity and it just
The projection.
The projection, and they sing.
Yeah, they do.
They really do. I'm thinking back to where I was working with all the old Rogers stuff.
Yeah.
Every bit of that's brass.
Wow.
Every bit of it. Like, they didn't make anything until I want to say until they got taken over by the Yamaha Corporation, where it just wasn't Rogers anymore.
Yeah.
That was when they stopped making their drums out of brass. But man, like, I've always loved the Rogers stuff, and I've always loved, anytime I get my hands on a Black Beauty,
snares are incredible.
Like, holy shit, this is the greatest thing ever.
It's basically the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, brass is the way to go.
Black nickel over brass. I talked about it earlier. I have an early 70s Gene Krupa Slingerland. So that's brass with chrome over brass.
Oh, yeah.
And I played it, and I'm like, once again, here it is, brass.
Yeah.
Fucking brass, man.
That's where it's at. And then as for cymbals, I'm with Paisely right now.
Cool.
So I'm using, I've got the Danny Carey Monad Ride.
Oh, wow.
Which I absolutely love that cymbal. And then
dry?
It's dry. It's heavy.
Super articulate.
Really, it's great. And the bell on that thing records. Oh, man. I've done some sessions with it, and every engineer's been like, what ride cymbal is that? That is the most amazing ride cymbal. And I'm like, I ain't telling nobody shit.
Yeah.
It's my secret now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's between me and Danny.
There it is.
And then as for like hi-hats, I'm using the Paisely Dark Crisp hats, 13s and 14s.
Nice.
And rude crashes all the way around now.
Durable.
And, yeah, because the first couple tours where I was working with Paisely, I would end up going through a lot of cymbals.
Yeah.
And Paisely's a company where, they're very attentive, and if you start breaking a lot of their cymbals, they're going to yell at you, and they're going to get it figured out to what's going to work with you and your sound.
Right.
And like some of the stuff they had me try out, I went in kind of kicking and screaming because I was like, oh, I don't know if I like those. And and especially with cymbals, we're all really, that's your voice.
Totally.
So like to kind of let go of the reins a little bit and let them say, try this stuff. One, it was really cool to have the option to be able to do that and then try it and then see how it works and then listen to your front of house engineer say, no, these cymbals are working way better than what you were using before. They didn't get the projection and blah, blah, blah. And
right.
Yeah, and so now I'm using probably the loudest cymbals that I've ever owned. I don't think I could do any small club with those.
Right.
Because they would just overpower everything.
Right.
But now, we're doing this arena tour, so everything's dialed in perfectly.
With like tour manager, techs, the band, how many people compose the Ministry crew, the road crew?
14 of us.
Wow.
15 including our bus driver.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of us. We've got 2 guitar techs. We have a drum tech, keys and playback tech, and who else? We got our front of house manager, tour manager. We have a monitor tech. All of which I'm not going to name names because we don't want anybody to go to jail.
Yeah.
Our assistant manager of the band travels with us as well. So like we have not a huge crew, but we have a crew that really takes care of us, and they have their jobs that they got to get done. And then of course, a lighting director who has probably one of the most hard jobs.
Yeah.
Having to make sure that all that it's choreographed stuff is between JB, myself, and us on the band, and then him having to run the lights and the visuals and the smoke machines, and
it's a whole production.
It is. He's got to have the click machine too, so that he knows when things are happening. So it's a fucking circus.
Big ass production for sure.
It is. It really is.
Do you sleep well on the bus? I've never had that experience. I'm always curious if people.
Yeah.
You can knock out pretty good.
Well, there's been some bus drivers that we've had in the past that kind of drive wild. Sometimes you'll wake up from like a wild turn or whatnot. But most tour buses drive really smooth, and the bunks are always positioned in a place where they don't get as much movement. So it works out pretty well. There's been other buses that we've had that like We were in Europe last summer, and like the AC would go out on the bus, and it's hot in Europe in the summertime.
Oh man.
And that gets to be uncomfortable, but at the same time, like we're not having to drive. We're not in a van.
Exactly.
Which, everybody knows that if you're in a tour van, there's two things it smells like, and that's farts and feet. Sometimes with a hint of French fries,
Right.
So
I feel like French fries are definitely the third variable there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh
yeah,
my
I mean,
God.
it's cool. And sometimes you'll get like brand new mattresses, and those end up being like, take a week to break them in.
Right.
But then after a while, they get worn in and everybody's comfortable. So
nice.
It's good.
Right on. We talked about wisdom from band teachers and anything. Have you gotten any funny insight or wisdom from Al Jourgensen?
Every day.
Yeah,
every day. He's always got something to tell us, and he always tells the best goddamn stories.
Oh, he's got no shortage of them.
No, yeah, exactly.
Jesus.
And sometimes the stories will, depending on how late the evening is, sometimes they'll get inflated, which makes them even better.
Right.
There's been stories he's told me before where I'm like, I bet there wasn't an explosion.
Right.
But then again, there could have been. I wasn't there, but there's one thing you can always tell. There's three things if he tells in a story, three things that happen. And one of them may or may not have happened. Uh-huh. But there's one thing you can always rest assured is that if he says that the cops showed up, they did.
Right.
Yeah. So the cops were there for that one, and I'm not surprised about that at all. But the explosion, you sure about that?
Right. Exactly.
But then again.
Yeah, definitely could have happened.
Exactly.
For those of you that are curious, feel free to read his book. You might too believe that explosions could have been a thing.
This is very true.
Absolutely. Well, shit, Derek, it was fun talking to you, man. Appreciate it. We managed to find a place here in Manhattan and just a random lobby in a hotel.
Which is completely awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so happy we did this.
Yeah, man. It was a good time. And once again, congrats on playing MSG, man.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm still waiting to make sure that this is really happening.
It's really happening.
And it says sold out everywhere. So
holy shit.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Right. I am absolutely over the moon stoked for this show.
Fucking A, man. We'll kick some ass, break a stick.
Break a few.
No cymbals.
No.
And yeah, man, great talking to you.
It's great talking to you. Thank you.
All right, everybody, thanks for hanging and listening, and thanks to Derek for catching up amidst a hectic day in a fucking hotel lobby. If I'm going to nearly piss my pants while doing an interview, I'd like to do it while I'm talking drums. That's the way I roll, y'all. Tune in next Monday. Crash, bang, boom.